All right, let's dive into one of these strangest, most unbelievable secret weapons from World War II. I mean, this is something straight out of a comic book, but it came dangerously close to becoming a terrifying reality. This is the story of Project X-ray.
So, where does this wild story even start? Well, not on some faraway battlefield. It actually kicks off with a really mysterious fire, right here on American soil. Okay, picture this. It's May 15th, 1943. We're in Carlsbad, New Mexico. A U.S. Army air base is just suddenly completely engulfed in flames. We're talking buildings, the control tower, even a general's car. Everything just incinerated.
So, what on earth happened? You'd think enemy sabotage, right? Or maybe some kind of tragic accident. Well, the truth is, it's stranger than you could possibly imagine.
You heard that right. The culprits were bats. Yeah, tiny bats, armed with miniature incendiary bombs. They were accidentally let loose during a top-secret test, and, well, they performed their mission perfectly. Just on the wrong target.
Okay, so how in the world did the U.S. military get to the point where they're strapping bombs to bats? It all started with one guy and a truly wild idea.
The idea itself was actually pretty simple, but totally devastating. This was dreamed up right after Pearl Harbor. The plan was to drop these big canisters full of bats over Japanese cities. The bats would fly out, find places to hide, in all those flammable wood and paper buildings, and then, after a set time, boom. The tiny bombs they were carrying would ignite, starting thousands and thousands of fires all at once.
And the guy who came up with this, he wasn't some general or a top physicist. Nope, he was a dental surgeon from Pennsylvania named Lytle Adams. And it turns out he just happened to be an acquaintance of the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. He got the idea after visiting Carlsbad Caverns, which is home to millions of bats.
Now, Adams was, well, he was passionate to say the least. In the proposal he sent to the White House, he claimed that bats were, and I quote, created by God to await this hour to play their part in the scheme of free human existence. Wow.
Now you'd think an idea like that, with a justification like that, would get laughed right out of the room. But somehow it landed on President Roosevelt's desk, and he sent it on with this little note. This man is not a nut. It sounds like a perfectly wild idea, but is worth your time looking into. And just like that, with a presidential thumbs up, one of the weirdest projects of the entire war was officially a go.
So the idea gets the green light. Now, how do you actually build a bat bomb? I mean, the challenge was just immense.
Adams put together probably one of the most unusual teams in military history. I mean, look at this roster. You've got your Harvard professors, sure, but also a movie actor, a former hotel manager, and even a reputed gangster. What a crew. A totally bizarre collection of talent for a top-secret weapons program. And the plan they came up with was incredibly intricate. First, they picked the Mexican free-tailed bat. Then, they attached this tiny 17-gram napalm device to each one, basically glued it on. To get them where they needed to go, they had to cool the bats down to put them into hibernation, and then they'd load over 1,000 of them into a single special bomb casing. And right here, you can see the two key parts of the whole scheme. The tiny unwitting soldier, the Mexican free-tailed bat, and the canister that was built to be its delivery vehicle. The whole idea was you'd drop this canister from a bomber, a parachute would pop out, and then it would open up, releasing its living cargo all over the target city. But, taking an idea like this from the drawing board and turning it into a functional weapon, well, that journey was filled with challenges, some major setbacks, and actually, some pretty shocking successes. Which brings us right back to that fire we started with. So, during their first big test, a handful of these armed bats were accidentally let go. They just flew off and did exactly what they were supposed to do. They found the nearest wooden buildings to roost in. The problem? Those buildings were the brand new hangars of their own test facility, which they promptly burned to the ground. Whoops. Okay, so after that fiery fiasco, the project got handed over to the Navy and got a new name, Project X-ray. For the final make-or-break test, the military built a full-scale replica of a Japanese village out in the Utah desert. This was it, the moment of truth.
So what happened? The results were, well, the weapon worked. It worked terrifyingly well. A final report concluded that a standard payload of incendiary bombs might start, maybe 400 fires. But a single bat bomb payload, it could start over 4,700 fires. It was just orders of magnitude more effective.
And this was no small-time operation. This was a serious undertaking. The government spent $2 million developing this thing. In today's money, that's over $35 million.
But even though they'd proven how effective it was, the project was basically on borrowed time. Just as the tests in mid-1944 were showing how devastating the weapon could be, Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King just abruptly canceled the entire program.
So why? Why cancel a weapon that worked so incredibly well? Well, the answer really comes down to a race against time. The bat bomb program, for all its potential, was just moving too slowly. It wasn't projected to be combat ready until the middle of 1945. And ultimately, it was just overtaken by an even bigger, even more secret program that promised a much faster way to end the war: the Manhattan Project.
Project X-ray really is one of history's great what-ifs. A truly devastating weapon shelved right at the last minute. It's just a powerful reminder that the line between a wild idea and some world-changing technology is often way, way thinner than we think. And it leaves you wondering, right? What seemingly crazy ideas are being cooked up in labs right now that might just define our future?